This is VOA News. I'm Marissa Melton. The United Nations top human rights official says the proliferation of crises brought on by conflict, climate change, poverty, and discrimination are eroding people's fundamental rights and freedoms and threatening the stability of nations worldwide. Volker Turk, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, told delegates attending the UN Human Rights Council Tuesday that a quarter of humanity is living today in places affected by violent conflict, and it is the civilians who suffer the most.
The war in Ukraine has led to civilian casualties and destruction of a shocking magnitude. The rights of Ukrainians will be harmed for generations to come, and the war's impact on fuel and food prices, as well as geopolitical tensions, are impacting negatively on people in every region of the world.
The invasion of Ukraine more than a year ago led to Russia being suspended from the UN Human Rights Council. While the war in Ukraine is in its second year, Turk noted that the people in Syria have endured 12 years of excruciating bloodshed, calling it a microcosm of the wounds inflicted by utmost contempt for human rights. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau reaffirmed on Tuesday their commitment to continue to support Ukraine in combating the Russian invasion of their country. Speaking during a news conference at a Canadian military base in Ontario, Trudeau said Canada is extending engineering and medical training for Ukrainian forces and announced a budget for demining efforts and energy equipment for Ukraine's power grid. EU's von der Leyen commended Canadian efforts in Ukraine and said the country has the necessary, quote, grit and spirit to win, but needs weaponry support. This is VOA News. Russia's defense minister said Tuesday that capturing the eastern Ukrainian city of Bakhmut was important to launching offensive operations deeper in the region, while Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky pledged to keep fighting for Bakhmut. Russian Defense Chief Sergei Shoigu called Bakhmut an important defensive hub for Ukrainian forces as he spoke to military officials and said capturing it would allow Russian troops to push deep inside Ukraine's defensive lines. In his nightly address Monday, Zelensky said his military commanders unanimously supported not withdrawing from Bakhmut, which has been the scene of months of fierce fighting. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba on Tuesday called for the International Criminal Court to launch an investigation into a video circulating on social media which appeared to show the killing of a Ukrainian soldier by Russian troops. VOA's Jeff Custer has more.
The 12-second video shows a man in Ukrainian army fatigues standing in a woods, appearing to speak to people behind the camera. He can be heard reciting Ukraine's battle cry, "Glory to Ukraine," before he is hit by gunfire and falls into a shallow hole. In a video statement provided by Ukraine's foreign ministry, Kuleba says the video is evidence of a war crime.
A Ukrainian man was clearly murdered simply for expressing his Ukrainian identity and love for his homeland. It is a war crime and a violation of the Geneva Conventions and international humanitarian law to kill unarmed prisoners of war.
The authenticity of the video has not been verified, nor any details about the people, date, and incident it claims to show. Russian officials have made no comment about the clip. Jeff Custer, VOA News, Washington.
Georgian President Salome Zorabishvili said in a video address on Tuesday that she supports demonstrators who took to the streets after Parliament gave its initial backing to a draft law on so-called foreign agents. Critics say the proposal represents an authoritarian shift. Speaking from New York City, where she's on an official visit, Zorabishvili expressed her intention to veto the law if it crosses her desk. She says, no one needed this law. It came from nowhere, but maybe it was dictated from Moscow. It needs to go. It needs to be repealed. If she vetoes, Parliament does have the power to override her veto. Police in the center of the capital, Tbilisi, used water cannon and tear gas in attempting to disperse thousands of demonstrators who fear the draft law could hurt the South Caucasus country's hopes of European Union membership. And the Biden administration is considering detaining migrant families who cross into the United States illegally as it prepares to end COVID-19 restrictions at the U.S.-Mexico border. I'm Marissa Melton, VOA News.
This is VOA News via remote. I'm Diane Roberts. The owner of Russia's Wagner Group military company has claimed his troops have extended their gains in the key Ukrainian stronghold of Bakhmut as fierce fighting continues in the war's longest battle. AP correspondent Charles de Ledesma reports.
Yevgeny Prigozhin said Wednesday that Wagner troops have
Tommy McNeil from VOA reports.
taken full control of the eastern part of Bakhmut. He claimed that they now control all districts east of the Bakhmut River that crosses the city in the eastern Donetsk region. The center of Bakhmut is located west of the river. Ukrainian authorities have not commented on Prigozhin's claim. The Institute for the Study of War, a Washington-based think tank, said in its latest analysis that Russian forces indeed have likely captured the eastern part of Bakhmut. Tommy McNeil, VOA News, Washington.
An explosion in eastern Syria on Wednesday killed at least 3 people, according to reports. A war monitoring group said the blast was likely caused by a drone strike that targeted Iran-backed militiamen. A road trip to Mexico for cosmetic surgery veered violently off course when 4 Americans were caught in a drug cartel shootout. 2 people are dead and 1 is wounded. In an interview on CNN this morning, the mother of one of the kidnapped survivors says her daughter tells her the vehicle the 4 Americans were in was targeted shortly after crossing into Mexico.
They were driving through and a van came up and hit them, and that's when they started shooting at the car, shooting inside the van or whatever, and I guess that since the other ones tried to run and they got shot at the same time.
The region's governor said their minivan crashed and was fired on shortly after they crossed into the border. This is VOA News. The Justice Department says an investigation of the police department in the U.S. city of Louisville in the state of Kentucky has found a pattern of violating constitutional rights. This after the fatal shooting of a black woman 3 years ago. AP Washington correspondent Sagar Magani has more.
Attorney General Merrick Garland says the misconduct ranges from discriminating against black people to assaulting the disabled, using excessive force, and carrying out searches based on invalid warrants.
This conduct is unacceptable. It is heartbreaking.
The probe started after Louisville police fatally shot Breonna Taylor in her home. The warrant used to enter is now part of a federal criminal investigation. The city has made several changes in both police leadership and policies, including banning no-knock warrants. Sagar Magani at the White House.
Testifying before the House Financial Services Committee, U.S. Federal Reserve Board Chairman Jerome Powell says the central bank is not settled yet on how much to boost its key interest rate later this month.
If, and I stress that no decision has been made on this, but if the totality of the data were to indicate that faster tightening is warranted, we'd be prepared to increase the pace of rate hikes.
Over the past year, the central bank has raised its key rate, which affects many consumer and business loans, 8 times. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak will on Monday meet U.S. President Joe Biden and Australian counterpart Anthony Albanese to discuss the emerging AUKUS security pact, the UK leader spokesperson said Wednesday. The meeting comes with Australia set to seal a nuclear-powered submarine deal with Britain or the United States, seen as part of the trio's efforts to counter China's growing assertiveness in the Pacific region. Here's more on an abortion case out of Texas.
The lawsuit is backed by abortion rights group Center for Reproductive Rights and says the Texas law is unclear. It's asking a state court to clarify doctors cannot be prosecuted for providing abortions if they deem the procedure is necessary. Texas is one of 13 states in the U.S. with a near-total ban on abortions, with laws passed after the Supreme Court knocked down Roe v. Wade last June.
And that was Ryan Chang reporting from Reuters. This is the first apparent case of pregnant women suing over curbs imposed after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade last June. I'm Diane Roberts. This is VOA News. This is VOA News via remote. I'm Diane Roberts. Rocket attacks hit critical infrastructure and residential buildings in 10 regions of Ukraine Thursday. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia unleashed the massive attack. Officials reported at least 6 deaths Thursday in the largest such nighttime attack in 3 weeks. The Russian-held Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine has lost all external power supply as a result of those missile attacks and is running on diesel generators, the UN atomic watchdog confirmed. International Atomic Energy Agency Director General Rafael Grossi says it's the 6th time this has happened, and soon their luck will run out.
This cannot go on. I am astonished by the complacency. Yes, the complacency. What are we doing to prevent this from happening?
Nuclear plants need constant power to run cooling systems and avoid a meltdown. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with U.S. Secretary of State Lloyd Austin on Thursday to discuss Iran's nuclear weapons threat and other key regional issues.
We have a common agenda to prevent from acquiring nuclear weapons and preventing Iran's aggression, maintaining the security and prosperity of this region, and seeking to expand the circle of peace.
Netanyahu had to be airlifted to the country's main international airport after throngs of cars and protesters prevented him from driving there. The demonstrations are part of nationwide protest underway for more than 2 months against Netanyahu and his government's contentious plan to overhaul the judiciary. Austin's schedule was rearranged to keep his engagements close to the airport. For more on these and other stories, visit us at voanews.com. This is VOA News. U.S. President Joe Biden will travel to the swing state of Pennsylvania Thursday to unveil a federal budget plan laden with spending proposals and higher taxes on the wealthy. This will form a blueprint for his expected 2024 re-election bid. In remarks, Oklahoma Congresswoman Stephanie Bice says the GOP has a better path than the one President Biden lays out in his budget.
Republicans have a strong vision for the country. It's called the Commitment to America. It is built on 4 main principles: an economy that is strong, a nation that is safe, a future that is built on freedom, and a government that is accountable.
Mr. Biden's proposal faces stiff opposition in Congress this year after Republicans won control of the House of Representatives in November's midterm elections, and large parts of it are unlikely ever to be enacted. Hong Kong's top Catholic official will visit Beijing in April, the first such visit in nearly 40 years. The city has been a strong Catholic beachhead on the edge of mainland China, ruled by officially atheist Communist Party. VOA's Richard Green has details.
The Hong Kong Catholic Diocese says Bishop Stephen Chow's trip will be the first time a Hong Kong bishop has officially visited Beijing since 1985, when Hong Kong was still a British colony. The Vatican and China entered into a secret but temporary agreement in 2018, which says both sides recognize the Pope as the supreme leader of the Catholic Church. But some local priests and missionaries fear that Beijing has been trying to tighten its control over Hong Kong Catholics. Pope Francis named Chow as Bishop of Hong Kong in 2021, a long-delayed appointment amid growing Western concern over human rights and freedoms in the city. Richard Green, VOA News, Washington.
Actor Chaim Topol has died in Tel Aviv at the age of 87, according to Israeli leaders. A cause of death was not given. AP correspondent Margie Zaraletta reports.
If I were a rich man.
Chaim Topol was so known for playing Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof that he was fielding requests to play the role even up to a few years ago. He was in other films, like For Your Eyes Only, Flash Gordon, and Galileo, but he had interests beyond film, including charity work. Topol said in a 2015 AP interview, fame and money from acting were not his goals in life.
Yes, obviously it's very nice. But to tell you that this is the most important thing, I'm not sure.
I'm Margie Zaraletta.
And Topol won a Golden Globe in 1972 for his performance in the film, which also earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. I'm Diane Roberts, VOA News.
This is VOA News. I'm Marissa Melton. China's Xi Jinping was elected again for a record-breaking third term as president Friday at the end of a week of meetings for China's two top political bodies, where he further tightened his control on the country. Reuters correspondent Ryan Chang reports.
Nearly 3,000 members of China's parliament voted unanimously for Xi on Friday in Beijing's Great Hall of the People in a race where there was no other candidate. The limit of 2 5-year presidential terms was written into China's constitution in 1982, 6 years after Mao Zedong's death by Deng Xiaoping, who recognized the dangers of one-man rule and the cult of personality after the chaos of the Cultural Revolution. Xi did away with that in 2018 with near-unanimous support from the legislature. And last October, the ruling Communist Party reconfirmed him as General Secretary of the Central Committee for another 5 years.
That's Reuters' Ryan Chang reporting. President Joe Biden and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen have agreed to open negotiations between the United States and the European Union on boosting the use of European minerals in the production of batteries for electrical vehicles that are eligible for U.S. tax credits. The leaders met in the Oval Office on Friday. The U.S. legislation includes incentives for the purchase of vehicles that are largely manufactured in the United States. The U.S. State Department said Friday that Secretary of State Antony Blinken will travel to Ethiopia next week as concerns linger over the implementation of a peace agreement and the conflict in the Tigray region. The conflict has left tens of thousands of people dead and millions uprooted. Blinken will also visit Niger, a key U.S. security partner, during the trip. State Department spokesman Ned Price said in a statement it will be the first ever visit to Niger by a U.S. Secretary of State. This is VOA News. Regulators rushed to seize the assets of California's Silicon Valley Bank. AP's Ed Donahue has more.
Silicon Valley is the nation's 16th largest bank. Depositors made a run, hurrying to withdraw money as anxiety over the bank's health spread. It has deep ties to Silicon Valley tech industries and startups. This is the second biggest bank failure in U.S. history. Washington Mutual collapsed at the height of the financial crisis more than a decade ago. Chair Cecilia Rouse with the Council of Economic Advisors says things have changed since then.
We've put in place stress tests and other tools that our regulators have to provide more resilience to our banking system.
Silicon Valley was heavily exposed to the tech industry, but there is little chance of chaos spreading in the broader banking sector. One CEO said nearly 1/3 of his startups won't be able to make payroll at some point in the next month if they can't access their money. Ed Donahue, Washington.
A stone axe and 3 ancient swords reported to be of Ukrainian origin were returned to Ukraine at a ceremony in the country's embassy in Washington, D.C. on Friday. Homeland Security official Frank Russo said the artifacts were intercepted in July of 2022 at JFK Airport's mail facility. Russo didn't reveal the identity or the nationality of the person transporting the ancient items, but said the individual is known to the U.S. government. A reporter asked if the person were Russian.
I don't have the nationality, but from that area for sure.
Ukraine's ambassador to the United States, Oksana Markarova, said the return of the item sends a strong message to Russia that it cannot win.
We also will send a very strong resounding message that Russians will not able to win this time. They will not able to win us on the battlefield. They will not able to win us on any other field, and they will not be able to steal our culture from us.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen urged members of the U.S. House of Representatives on Friday to raise the federal debt ceiling without conditions, warning that a default on U.S. debt would cause economic and financial collapse. In testimony before the Republican-controlled House Ways and Means Committee, Yellen said that failure to increase the $31.4 trillion borrowing cap would threaten the economic progress that the United States has made since the COVID-19 pandemic. Tropical storm Freddie was due to hit the coast of southern Africa again late Friday or early Saturday, one of the strongest storms ever recorded in the southern hemisphere. Freddie may also have broken the record for the longest-lasting tropical cyclone, this according to the World Meteorological Organization. The current record is held by a 31-day hurricane in 1994. A spokesman for the WMO says Freddie's been around for 33 days. Marissa Melton, VOA News.